You need to step back now. The sentence didn't waver, didn't question. It was a verdict delivered at 36,000 feet. Nicole Foster, lead flight attendant for Horizon Airlines Flight 273, stood like a gatekeeper in the first-class aisle, eyes locked on the man who had just sat down in seat 2A. She wasn't whispering. She wanted the cabin to hear, and they did. A sharp pause followed, the kind that happens right before a storm breaks. Marcus Carter didn't move. I showed you my ticket. His voice was even. I showed you my ID. What else do you need? Nicole didn't blink. She smiled the cold kind. Something real. 30 seconds earlier, it had all looked normal. Passengers drifting in. Seat numbers glowing above leather headrests. Ambient music humming low. The typical hush of boarding. And then that voice. Sharp enough to slice through pre-flight calm. Now, back to the beginning. Marcus Carter entered the cabin in a fitted black tee and dark jeans. No logos, no briefcase. No sign of power, just presence, the quiet kind. The kind that unsettles the wrong people. He moved like he knew exactly where he belonged. C2A. But Nicole didn't see presence. She saw a challenge. She stopped him before he could sit. Sir, this cabin is for priority passengers. He handed her the pass. She didn't even read the name. Brian Chan, assistant crew, strolled up next. He's in the wrong section, he said, half laughing. I've seen this before. Nicole looked at Marcus. Unless you show proof, and I mean corporate level clearance, I'll have you escorted off. Mia Lang, 23, trainee, stood frozen near the galley. She had seen the scanner turn green. She knew the name, but fear chained her voice. A woman in seat 4C began recording, quietly, discreetly, but not secretly. Nicole dropped the boarding pass like it was a flyer. You can either walk to economy or be walked out. Marcus didn't flinch. He remembered 2006 Newark Airport. A recruiter for a regional airline told him, "You've got potential, but not the polish." Translation: wrong look, wrong skin. Now, nearly 2 decades later, he held 25% of Horizon Airlines, and the crew had just dragged their legacy into turbulence. Before we go deeper, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country below. And if you believe dignity shouldn't require designer clothes, hit like and subscribe. These stories matter, and they're just getting started. Because in 5 minutes, the seat Nicole tried to erase would become the most powerful one on this plane. And Marcus Carter wasn't going anywhere. Mia Lang's fingers hovered just above the call button. She didn't press it. Not yet. She was the youngest on the crew. First month in uniform. First week shadowing Nicole. She had watched the man in seat 2A board. Watched his pass skin green. Watched his name flash across the manifest. Carter. Marcus verified priority override. She had seen it. She knew. But silence was safer. Nicole was still standing there, one hip cocked, arms folded like she'd won. Brian leaned into her ear. You want me to call security now or after he posts something? Nicole smirked. Let him post. No one's gonna care. But someone already was. Row 4, CP. Emma Larson was still filming quietly, calmly. Her lens fixed not just on Marcus, but on the whole crew. Her caption read, "This man showed ID. Ticket, stayed calm. Why is he being pushed out?" Post, flight bias, views, climbing. Daniel, the captain, finally appeared, mid-40s, clean-shaven. The kind of pilot who signed autographs at career day. He looked at Marcus, then at Nicole, then back to Marcus. Sir, this seat has been flagged. Please relocate until we verify your boarding status. Marcus didn't move. You mean the boarding pass you've already torn? Daniel blinked. Behind him, passengers began murmuring louder. A teenage boy near the bulkhead leaned toward his mom. Why are they doing this? He didn't do anything. Marcus slowly reached into his bag, calm, measured, no sudden moves. Pulled out a black card, placed it on the fold-out tray. Platinum with no name. Just the logo, stylized wings, and the number 25. Brian snorted, "You people and your props." Nicole chuckled. He probably printed the card at Kinko's. Mia flinched. That was too much. She stepped forward. Captain. Daniel didn't turn. Mia. Not now. Nasser's skin was clean. I saw it. Nicole whirled. Excuse me. Mia swallowed hard. His past scanned green. He's on the manifest. I remember the name because. She paused. Because it matched the override list. Priority executive level. The cabin froze. Marcus didn't speak. Not yet. Nicole took one step back. Brian said, that's not possible. Mia looked straight at Nicole. I saw it. Then to Daniel. You asked for verification. You had it. You just didn't want to see it. From row 4, Emma whispered, tell them louder. Marcus exhaled, eyes still calm. But inside, the count had already started, and they were out of time. The tray table snapped shut. Nicole slammed it up with the heel of her palm, the black card still on it. Enough with the games, she hissed. Then without warning she reached for Marcus's bag. Passengers gasped. Emma's voice cut across the aisle. Don't touch him. Too late. Nicole yanked the satchel off the seat beside him and shoved it into Brian's arms. Brian laughed at low, theatrical kind. Let's see what our VIP brought with him. Fake IDs. Stolen vouchers. Mia stepped forward again, voice firmer now. That's against protocol. Nicole didn't turn. You're a trainee. Learn to follow. Daniel raised a hand like he was keeping order in a courtroom. Security's been called. If he has nothing to hide, he won't mind answering a few questions. Marcus still hadn't moved, still hadn't raised his voice. He looked at Daniel, then at Nicole, then slowly stood. No rush, no panic, just gravity. You've invaded my space. You've taken my property. And now you've escalated a situation that could have ended with a sir. I apologize. Nicole crossed her arms tighter. You think the tone scares me? No, Marcus said. I think it reveals you. Gasps rippled through row 3. Then came Linda Walsh, security officer. Uniform crisp, authority loaded. Step back, sir, she ordered. You're obstructing crew operations. Marcus turned to her slowly. I am seated. I have not moved. They've taken my bag. They've torn my boarding pass. They've called me a fraud. And now you're threatening removal? Linda's jaw tightened. For non-compliance. Then the words, you don't belong in first class. They didn't come from Linda. They came from Brian. Too loud. Too smug. Too revealing. Mia gasped audibly. Emma whispered. He said it. He really said it. From row 5, someone else began filming. Marcus didn't blink. He looked down, then slowly back up at Linda, and finally spoke the words they should have feared from the start. Rachel, he said, into his AirPods, activate phase 1. Loop in Sarah, James, and David. A voice responded, cool and immediate. Already on the line. The board's listening. Nicole paled. Brian froze. Daniel stepped back, but Marcus wasn't done. You touched what didn't belong to you. He turned slowly, letting the cabin see him. Now I'll do the same. And the power in the plane shifted, not because of shouting, but because the man in seat 2A had just spoken like someone who owned the sky. The cabin didn't breathe. Marcus Carter stood still, not with fury, but with finality. His voice hadn't risen. His hands hadn't clenched. But everything in the air had changed. Brian, still gripping the satchel like it was evidence, looked lost now, as if it had started as a joke and somehow morphed into court testimony. Nicole tried to recover. She stepped forward, lips pursed tight. This is ridiculous. You think a phone call changes anything. You think the board is. Already listening, Marcus interrupted. Rachel, put them on speaker. Rachel's voice came through the AirPods, now broadcasting to the entire cabin. Confirmed, James Thompson, Sarah Lee, and David Ortega are live. CEO override protocol activated at 6:08 p.m. Eastern. This conversation is now being recorded. A beat, then James's voice, calm, clipped. Marcus, you have full executive authority. Proceed as you see fit. Nicole took a half step back. Daniel blurted, wait, Marcus? He squinted, the name clicked, and suddenly, The man in the black tee wasn't invisible anymore. Marcus Carter. The Marcus Carter, founder, billionaire, and 25% shareholder of the airline they were flying for. Emma's voice cracked from her seat. Oh my God, he owns the airline. Brian dropped the satchel, literally. Mia took a shaky breath. I told you, his skin was green. Linda, the security officer. Stephen, I wasn't informed of any. You weren't informed, Marcus cut in, because you weren't supposed to be. He turned toward her. Your job was to protect passengers, not profiles. Nicole tried again, reaching for the intercom. This is an active flight zone. You can't override FAA protocol. Marcus raised one brow. You tore my boarding pass. You seized my belongings. You called me a liar, a scammer, a threat. He stepped closer, not aggressive, but unignorable. And you did it in front of over 100 witnesses, all while standing in a seat that reports to my board. Daniel stepped forward, sweating now. Look, we didn't know. You weren't wearing a suit, Marcus asked, holding a briefcase. I didn't fit your image of power, so you tried to shrink mine. The cabin was silent except for Emma's phone. She hadn't stopped filming. Then a voice from row 6, a quiet man in a tie. He never raised his voice, not once, and they still treated him like a problem. Marcus turned back to Nicole. This seat, he said, tapping the armrest of 2A, wasn't a mistake. It was a test, and you just failed it. And then, the sentence that broke her. You're not dealing with a passenger. You're dealing with the person who signed your paychecks. Nicole's face drained. Brian stepped away. Daniel looked like he wanted to disappear into the cockpit. Marcus didn't flinch. He just sat back down in 2A. Not defiant, not smug, just finished. Then he spoke one last sentence low, surgical. Rachel, prepare the terminations. And the plane? It hadn't even taken off yet, but the descent had already begun. Marcus didn't need the intercom. He had the room, every row, every breath. Rachel's voice came through again, this time on speaker for all to hear. All 3 board members have approved emergency authority under Protocol 17A. Marcus, you may proceed with crew terminations and ground directives. HR is monitoring live. Nicole stumbled back the steps. Brian pressed himself against the galley wall like it might open and swallow him whole. Captain Daniel tried to step in, palms open, eyes wide. Wait, please. Let's de-escale it. This is the de-escalation, Marcus said. And you're lucky it's not federal. He turned, slow and steady, toward the flight crew. He didn't need to yell. He just spoke. Nicole Foster, you're relieved of duty for racial profiling, violation of FAA ethics, and physical interference with a verified executive passenger. Your employee badge will be deactivated before we land. Nicole's jaw clenched, but she said nothing. Nothing clever. Nothing smug. Just a shallow breath she couldn't quite finish. Brian chained complicit misconduct, verbal bias, and attempted tampering with passenger property. You're done. HR will contact you regarding severance eligibility. Spoiler, there won't be any. Brian's mouth opened, but the words didn't make it out. And Daniel, Marcus turned to the captain. You allowed it. You reinforced it. You overrode your own crew member's verified scam because someone didn't look right. Daniel shook his head, voice low, shaky. I didn't know. I swear I didn't. That's the point, Marcus said. You should have. The silence that followed was deeper than any turbulence. It wasn't fear. It was realization. Marcus looked to Linda, the security officer. You still want me removed? Linda hesitated, then stepped back. No, sir, I don't. Emma, still filming, whispered. He's not just into A. He runs the whole plane. Then a ripple began. First Mia, then Emma, then to more passengers. They stood, not out of protest, out of principle, like a wave of correction rolling through first class. We saw what happened, Emma said. He didn't cause the disruption. He endured it. Mia stepped beside Marcus now, clear, calm, shaking just a little. You deserve better, sir. We all do. Marcus turned to her just once and nodded, then said to Rachel, ground this flight, replace the entire crew, Every one of them. Rachel's voice was immediate. New flight crew is waiting at the gate. Passengers will be informed. Emergency compliance report is being compiled now. Daniel sagged where he stood. Nicole dropped into the jump seat, pale and silent. Brian just left. No bags. No protest. Just shame. And Marcus? He sat back down in seat 2A. Not because he had one, but because he never should have been challenged in the first place. He looked forward, calm, still, and said the words that should have been obvious from the beginning. No one should have to look like power to be treated like a person. And this flight hadn't even left the ground, but it had just changed the altitude of accountability. They didn't clap. Not yet. What swept through the cabin wasn't celebration. It was recognition. The kind that turns shock into stillness. Passengers weren't just sitting anymore. They were watching history fold itself into real time. Marcus Carter sat into the seat once called not yours. Now, no one dared question it. Emma lowered her phone. She didn't need to film anymore. The story was already writing itself. From row 5, a man in a gray blazer raised his voice, low but firm. I've flown Horizon for 12 years. Never seen anything like this. But I've felt it. Quiet bias. Unspoken rules. Now it's out in the open. A woman across the aisle added, my father's been stopped in some more times than I can count. Never raised his voice either. It didn't matter. The murmurs spread, like a wave breaking walls. Marcus stayed silent, until a teenager leaned into the aisle. Young, Latino, eyes wide. Sir, are you really the CEO? Marcus turned, met his gaze, nodded once. The boy whispered, then thank you for not staying quiet. Marcus looked around the cabin. This isn't about me, he said. It's about a culture that assumes power wears a suit and never sweats. He stood. This uniform, he said, tapping his chest, is cotton, not armor. And I shouldn't have to wear a title to be treated like a human. Then he did something no one expected. He turned to Mia. You knew the truth, he said. You didn't just whisper it. You stood in it. Mia swallowed hard, eyes glassy. I just couldn't watch it happen again. You won't, Marcus replied. Not on my flights. Not in my company. Then, to the rest of the cabin. We're not just replacing a crew today. We're resetting the altitude of respect. You witnessed it. You stood for it. You changed this. He turned to Linda. You're not fired. You're being reassigned. But first you'll be trained under her. He nodded to Mia. Linda blinked, stunned, then nodded once. Tight. I'll show up different. Then Rachel's voice echoed again, this time through the cabin's PA system. Ladies and gentlemen, this flight will be delayed for recrew and compliance audit. A new team will board shortly. On behalf of Horizon Airline San Archio, you are free to deplane or remain seated. Snacks and updates incoming. Someone laughed softly. Another clapped once. Then more followed. Not a cheer. A statement. This wasn't just a plane anymore. It was a classroom, a courtroom, and a clearing. And Marcus? He didn't move. He looked at the sky beyond the window. The plane hadn't left the ground, but something far bigger had just taken off. 15 minutes passed. The aircraft remained grounded, but inside, the atmosphere had shifted from tension to transformation. The new flight crew are evacuated, efficient, eyes alert. They didn't ask questions. They had been briefed. Mia was moved to the front, a new name tag pinned to her collar, acting lead. She didn't smile. Not yet. She was still absorbing the weight of it. Rachel's voice crackled through Marcus's AirPods again. No longer just private. He tapped to project it through the cabin. Board directive confirmed. Marcus, you now have authority to implement system-wide review. David and Sarah have pre-cleared public statement and full crew audit protocols. A woman from row 3, a former HR exec judging by her posture, raised a brow. Wait system-wide, like entire airline? Marcus stood. You don't correct a symptom by treating it alone. You address the pattern. And the silence that protected it. He pulled a slim black tablet from his bag, opened an encrypted file. Effective immediately, he announced, Horizon Airlines will launch Operation Altitude, a full audit of every flagged incident, every suppressed complaint, every erased name in our verification system. Gasps, then silence. Flight attendants who dismiss passenger concerns based on appearance will be reviewed. Supervisors who ignored trainees when they tried to speak will be suspended. Captains who overrode protocol to protect optics over ethics will be grounded. Brian Chan's name lit up red on the shared flight manifest. Status: terminated. Nicole Foster, permanently banned. Daniel Pierce, under investigation. Linda, reassigned. Shadowing Mia for 3 months, no uniform until cleared. Mia turned toward Marcus, still stunned. "You don't even know me." "I do now," he said, "and that's what matters." Then came the voice they didn't expect. From row 8, soft shoulder, unshaken. "I tried to warn them 2 years ago." Heads turned. A woman in a gray cardigan. Name: Tanya Brooks, former ground crew, now a passenger. "I filed a report when Nicole denied boarding to a family flying for a funeral," Tanya said. "They lost the flight, the company lost the footage, and no one ever called me back." Emma began recording again. Marcus turned to Tanya. "Thank you for speaking up. You won't be erased this time." Rachel's voice followed. "We've located the report, logged in 2023, marked inconclusive by then Supervisor Brian Chan." Of course. The silence inside the cabin wasn't from fear anymore. It was focused. Marcus looked at the passengers' witnesses turned changemakers. "This was never about a seat," he said. "It was about what happens when people think they can decide who deserves to sit down." He sat back in 2A, this time not to prove anything, but to reclaim everything. And outside, the plane was still waiting. But inside, the future had already taken off. By the time Marcus's plane was cleared for reboarding, the story had already left the tarmac. Flight Bias, 2A. He owns Turlin, all trending. Emma's video hit 1.4 million views in under an hour. The clip, Marcus saying, "No one should have to look like power to be treated like a person," retweeted by civil rights orgs, stitched into TikToks, reposted on aviation forums. But Marcus didn't smile. He didn't care about going viral. He cared about never going silent again. Back in her eyes in HQ, the executive floor lit up with alerts. Rachel's voice came through. "Marcus' public sentiment is surging. Pierre wants a controlled response. Do you want to approve a statement?" Marcus didn't hesitate. No press release, no deflection. "We say it plain. On every screen at every terminal." He dictated it himself. One sentence. "Starting today, Horizon Airlines will no longer define professionalism by suit, skin, or silence." At gate monitors across the country, passengers blinked as the line appeared. No context, no logo, just truth. Then came the ripple. A former pilot wrote on LinkedIn, "I was benched for having dreadlocks, never told directly, but it was understood." Seeing Marcus sit into a changed that for me. A baggage handler posted anonymously, "We had a code for non-standard elite passengers in first class that didn't fit the look. We were told to double-check them. I want to apologize." Rachel followed up, "We're getting reports. Dozens. Staff who were silenced. Clients downgraded without cause." Mia's story opened a door. Marcus nodded. "Then keep it open." Inside the cabin, Marcus turned to Mia and Linda. "I want a new policy drafted," he said. "Call it the no suit, no problem code." Mia raised a brow. "What does that mean?" Marcus smiled faintly. "It means, if your only standard for excellence is appearance, you don't belong in this company." Linda lowered her gaze. Not ashamed, just changed. Passengers on board began to relax not because the flight was resuming, but because they knew something had shifted. A quiet man from row 6 leaned into the aisle. "You didn't have to stay on this flight," he said to Marcus. "You could have left, let Pierre clean it up." Marcus replied, low and certain, "That's not leadership. Leadership is staying in the mess until it's better." The cabin didn't erupt. It didn't need to. It just aligned. And somewhere, in dozens of airports across the country, gate agents paused before judging a passenger by shoes or silence. Because something bigger than protocol had taken flight. And this time, it wasn't going to land until everyone, regardless of suit or skin, had a seat. The next morning, Marcus arrived at Horizon HQ. No cameras, no podium, just a plain charcoal jacket, dark slacks, and that same quiet presence that once got him overlooked. The boardroom buzzed when he stepped in. Rachel stood beside him, tablet in hand. 27 staff reports and overnight, 14 from past employees, and one message you'll want to read yourself. She handed him a single printed letter. Handwritten, no header, no branding. Marcus read it once, then again, slower. Marcus, you won't remember me, but I remember you. 2006, Newark. I was the regional recruiter who told you, not the image we're boarding right now. It was code. We both knew it, and I watched you leave without arguing, without raising your voice. I've carried that silence ever since. What you did on flight to 7-3, you didn't just make policy. You made me face my own legacy. If there's a way I can help this reform, I'm ready. No conditions, just truth. TM. Marcus folded the letter slowly. His hands didn't tremble, but something in his breath caught. Rachel looked at him. You okay? He nodded once. He was right. I never argued. I just built something so they couldn't look away. Later that day, Marcus stood in front of the full Horizon executive team. Behind him, a screen. No slide deck, just one sentence in white on black. We don't fix systems by blaming people. We fix them by believing the ones they ignored. He spoke clearly. This isn't a rebrand. This is an internal reckoning. We will re-audit every denial, every complaint, every inconclusive incident buried by bias. We will create a direct channel for frontline voices to reach board-level ears. And we will implement real-world checks, audio flags, facial audit logs, and a new accountability tier where uniform doesn't equal immunity. One executive raised a hand. Well, Mr. Carter, that's going to disrupt everything. Marcus smiled. Good. By week's end, a new video appeared on Horizon's site. Just Marcus, no background music, looking straight into the camera. You don't need a suit to be respected. You don't need a badge to be believed. And if your system doesn't protect dignity by default, then it's not broken. It's rigged. So we're unrigging it every day, every gate, every seat. My name is Marcus Carter, CEO of Horizon Airlines, and I won't let another silence become a legacy. The video ends. No logo, just a simple screen. Flight 273 changed everything. Welcome aboard. It was Flight 918. 3 weeks after 273. Same airline, new crew, new culture. Gate B12, JFK. A black woman in her 60s approached the counter. Hair silver-wrapped, coat pressed, boarding pass in hand. She looked at her seat number, then looked again. First class, she whispered to herself, barely daring to believe it. The gate agent, early 30s, name tag read. Carter smiled as he scanned her pass. Yes, ma'am. Welcome aboard. Seat 1B. You're early, but we've been expecting you. She paused, not because she didn't understand, but because for the first time in her life no one had asked her to prove she belonged. She looked up. You didn't check my ID twice. You didn't ask if I was in the right line. Carter's smile didn't fade. Not anymore. Not here. Elsewhere in the terminal, a new poster hung across every Horizon gate. We don't ask people to look the part. We ask our people to change the part. Marcus Carter. It wasn't just marketing. It was policy. At headquarters, the results had started rolling in. 92% increase in passenger satisfaction among non-white premium flyers. 70 for flag cases reopened and formally reviewed. 3 airport managers resigned. Mia Lane promoted again, now regional trainer for bias response. Linda Walsh completed her program. Quiet, humble, recommitted. Back on Flight 918, the woman in 1B sat down. Didn't look around nervously. Didn't clutch her purse. She just settled. For once, not in defense, but in dignity. Next to her, a white businessman offered a polite nod. First time in first class? She smiled. No, sir. Just the first time I didn't have to feel like it was borrowed. He paused, then said quietly, "Well, I'm glad. About time things changed." She looked out the window, past the jet bridge, past the clouds, and whispered, "They did, because someone finally stayed seated." At that exact moment, Marcus Carter was landing in Seattle. No press, no security, no announcement. He walked through arrivals like anyone else. Except this time, people looked, not because he was flashy, but because he had made the sky feel fair again. A teenage girl in Horizon crew uniform walked past him, stopped, turned. "Sir, flight to 173? He nodded. "I was watching the night," she said. It made me apply. Marcus smiled, then stepped aside. "Then get to it. We've got seats to protect." She walked on, shoulders straighter, eyes higher. And Marcus? He didn't need to fly today. He'd already arrived. The media had waited weeks. Requests poured in from every angle: CNN, Forbes, aviation journals, day panels. But Marcus Carter hadn't spoken to a single outlet. Not until now. The setting: a simple auditorium in Atlanta. No spotlight, no fancy set. Just one stage, one chair, and a mic. He walked out alone. No entourage, no speech cards. Just the quiet weight of someone who's already said everything that mattered, and now had to say it again for the record. The moderator, a white man in his 50s, tried to break the ice. "So Marcus, what made you stay in that seat?" Marcus didn't flinch. "Because I've been asked to move too many times in my life. And each time, I did. Not because I was wrong, but because I was tired." Flight to 173 wasn't the first time. It was just the last. In the audience, Emma Larson sat in the third row, next to Mia, next to Zara Brooks, the quiet passenger whose voice cracked the cabin open when no one expected it. She hadn't spoken in public since the day, but today, she was wearing a pin that said, "I stayed seated." The moderator turned to her. "You were a passenger. You spoke up. Why?" Zara looked nervous, then steady. "Because they told me to be quiet 2 weeks before, and I listened. But when I saw them doing it again, I couldn't. I didn't know who he was. I just knew what it felt like." Emma leaned in. "That's what changed it." Later that day, Horizon's new internal training video premiered nationwide. Not a script, not actors, real footage, real voices. Zara recounting the moment she recorded Nicole's refusal. Mia holding her phone at her side. Marcus saying, "You touched what didn't belong to you. Now I'll do the same." At the end of the video, a message appears. This isn't a story about power. This is a story about patience, about presence, about not moving so the system has to. The program rolled out to 47 bases within 2 weeks. Zara became the face of Horizon's first Passenger Dignity Council. Emma joined as an equity advisor. Mia now trained full-time teams from coast to coast. And Marcus? He issued one final internal memo. It didn't have a subject line. It didn't need one. "If you ever forget why we changed everything, replay the silence before I spoke, and ask yourself why no one else did." It was quiet again. Flight 273. Same route. Same time, same seat. Marcus Carter boarded last. Not for attention, for peace. He wore the same black crew neck, the same worn sneakers. No name tag, no entourage, no announcement, and no one stopped him. The flight attendant glanced at his pass, nodded, and said, "Welcome aboard, Mr. Carter." But not with fear, not with recognition, just respect. He sat in 2A. The same seat they once tried to pull him from. Now just another chair in the sky. Across the aisle, a boy leaned toward his father. "Dad, that's the CEO, right?" The father smiled. "Yes. Why is he flying with us?" The man didn't pause. Because he never wanted a private jet. He wanted a public space that treated people like they matter. The captain's voice broke through the cabin. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard. This flight marks 1 year since Horizon's flight to 173. Today, every crew member flying this route is here because of what changed the day and who changed it." A pause. Then, "Thank you, Mr. Carter, for staying seated so the rest of us could stand taller." Murmurs spread, but Marcus didn't react. He wasn't here for applause. He looked out the window. The jet bridge pulled away. Across the aisle, a young girl in uniform passed by. She mouthed, "Thank you." He nodded once. No speeches, no sound bites, just a man in a black shirt and a seat that no longer needed defending. The engines rumbled, wheels lifted, and as the sky welcomed him again, Marcus closed his eyes. Not to rest, but because, for the first time in his life, he didn't have to watch for the moment everything would go wrong. It already had, and he made sure it wouldn't again, because justice doesn't always shout. Sometimes it just sits and refuses to move.